You're going to spend it on investments, you're going to spend it on businesses, you're not going to spend it on everyday lifestyle because it's too much money to spend. Okay, we were talking earlier about limited partnerships and how they relate to estate planning. Well, now let's talk about a little bit more sophisticated type of entity, and that's a limited liability company. Now, limited liability companies were really a creation out of Europe, of all places. They were using companies that had a hybrid situation of a corporation, the best attributes of corporations and the best attributes of partnerships. And the best attribute of a partnership is tax neutral, tax flow through. So it's taxed like a sole proprietorship. You don't have a separate tax structure. It just files a tax return that designates a K-1 form, and all the assets and all the income flows right through to the individuals. Well, that's really what some people prefer for tax structure. But what people are worried about is liability, because when you have a partnership, you're exposed to unlimited liability. When you're a sole proprietorship, 100% liability. When you're in partnership, you're not only exposed to liability for yourself, but vicariously for acts of your partners. So your partners can go out and sign a contract, you're liable. They can go out and make a handshake deal, you're liable. And it happens often that partners, they're very ambitious in business, they make a lot of deals. Well, anything goes wrong, you're going to be sued personally. So what we do is we create an entity like the limited partnership. You have limited partners. Each of those people that contribute to the limited partnership or get gifts of limited partnership assets are not liable except to the extent of their contributions. The general partner accepts the liability. When a limited liability company takes the best attributes of corporations and partnerships and merges them together, now you have a new term called manager. You have a manager of the limited liability company. He manages it on behalf of the LLC. The members, which are the limited partners, have no liability. They're merely investors. So we've really come up with a hybrid entity that seems to solve all our problems. The Internal Revenue Service, they don't know how to treat things initially when they come out. Well, now they've come out with new rulings. They call it check-the-box rule. That means you check the box, you want to be taxed as a corporation or partnership. Well, typically people elect partnership taxation for the flow-through methods. Also, the old limits of 35 is now up to 75 for S corporations, which are like a flow-through type corporation. LLCs, unlimited number of partners. So a lot of new attributes on LLCs that really tend to help our clients. So what we want to do on an LLC is that same situation, gifting to the children. You can gift through the LLC as you would a limited partnership. And complete control would be with the manager. The manager of the LLC has complete control. That can be husband and wife, or it can be just one person. And the limited partners or members can be living trusts or individuals or children. So the characteristics now of LLCs is we have active participation is okay by the members. They can actively participate to some extent within the LLC. Continuity of life, we used to have to designate an expiration period upon limited partnerships. Well, LLCs can go on. And we have the complete limited liability. And the LLC can have its own bankruptcy filing if it needs to. It doesn't have to involve all the members of a partnership when you have a partnership filing. Now, LLCs are very good. Not only can it hold investment assets, it can also hold small business assets. So if you have a partnership of two individuals, and typically you do a general partnership, a handshake deal, small contract, no, let's do an LLC. Limited liability company, exactly that, limited liability, tax attributes to the individuals. I think now people are getting more comfortable with that term LLC. You see it now on buildings, you see it on letterheads, you see it on business cards. It's becoming more acceptable. Wyoming started it. It moved on from there. I think about 49 states now have limited liability statutes. California has complied about 3 years ago. So now everybody feels comfortable with LLC. It's good for real estate. It's good for liquid assets. It's good as an asset protection entity, because if people want to sue you, and they want to sue, say, one of the beneficiaries, say you add in your children as limited liability company members or limited partners. If they get involved in a car accident, if they marry the wrong person, go through a divorce, go through any type of litigation, what's the consequence? Well, the worst consequence is they're going to get a judgment against that one individual, not against the limited liability company. And if they get a judgment against that one individual, what are they going to be able to do? They're going to go after that individual's personal assets. Remember that limited liability company, that asset is within the structure. All they have is an intangible interest. All they have is a limited partnership membership interest in this limited liability company. It's really just an intangible right for distributions. Now, what happens when this person, say a child, gets a lawsuit against them? Of course, we're not going to distribute any assets or any income to that person because they're under attack by a judgment creditor. So the parents, wisely within their control, will marshal the assets and withhold them from that one child until their problems go away. What the creditor gets is what's called a charging order. That charging order means they can charge against that income. So they're going to try to step into that position as a limited liability company member and try to receive the income distributions as they come in. But lo and behold, no distributions, because the wisdom of the parents is do not distribute to that child, distribute to the other children. So here you have a judgment creditor. They're going to have to wait a long time. They're going to be waiting for distributions. In the meantime, the tax attributes, the tax effect flows through on that Form K-1. And who does it flow through to? To possibly the judgment creditor. So they could be stuck with a tax liability, but no income, no asset to pay the tax liability. It puts a judgment creditor in a very difficult situation, trying to obtain this charging order and then trying to perfect the charging order against the income from the limited liability company. And this is also assuming that we set this up early on. We didn't set it up after a lawsuit occurred. We can do a similar situation within trust. We can do what's called sprinkling powers. If we have 3 beneficiaries, we can sprinkle amongst the beneficiaries. So if we feel that there's one person, there's always somebody in the family who's not always the most prudent investor or the most careful driver or the best business person to get involved with business deals. They're the ones that go bankrupt, get lawsuits against them. Well, let's sprinkle that income through the trust to the other family members. That right to income is just really contingent. It's contingent upon the trustees choosing to designate a distribution to that person. So if they're having a lawsuit, no distribution to them. Same thing within the limited liability company agreement. We can put in a designation that we only distribute to the limited liability members that have no lawsuits currently. Or as the wisdom of the parents go, we're only going to distribute as we feel appropriate. So what would we have achieved? We've achieved the estate planning objectives of maximizing the exclusion upon death. Not just 1 million, we moved it way up to possibly, with many years of planning, up to 10 million or more. And all the future appreciation goes to those children too. We've also achieved asset protection because the asset now, real estate, liquid assets, cars, boats, airplanes, rental property, everything goes into that limited liability company entity and is not titled directly in the name of the person. The husband and wife, John and Susan Smith, we're not going to title it that way. We're going to title it in the Equity Resource LLC or Tri-Peak Investment Trust, names like that, just generic names. So what we've achieved now is anonymity, privacy too. I don't know if you've ever seen a property profile. If you contact the title company, they'll send you for free a property profile on your house. It'll show the owners of the house, the value of the home, the mortgages on the home. It takes about 3 minutes to read that and figure out how much equity someone has and how it's titled. What we do now is we designate that asset into the living trust with a name like the Alpine Equity Trust, some level of anonymity. We designate a separate independent trustee. It doesn't even show up in your name. If we put it in the limited liability company, it's owned by that limited liability company. You, as the resident party within that home, it appears to the public you're almost like a tenant because it's owned by a company, it's owned by XYZ Company, LLC, and as far as people see, you could be paying rent. Actually, if you notice, real estate companies, realtors are always soliciting for listings. They will contact the LLC as being the owner. They will leave you alone. And now, these days, privacy is so important. If you have significant wealth, you want to keep it private. So we've been able to achieve complete privacy with liquid assets, real estate assets, proceeds of life insurance, pension plans. Everything can go through that limited liability company and retain your privacy and your estate planning objectives. Now, where to put this LLC? We can use California. We use often Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming. All these states have, especially Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada, have 0 state income tax. Also, their filing fees are very low. And I think most all the states now have complied with the LLC statute, except perhaps Louisiana. Now let's talk a little bit more about the asset protection. And asset protection, we should talk about active businesses, because so many people these days with a booming economy, they're looking at starting up their small business. And the first way that people start thinking about business is a corporation. Well, the problem with corporations, tax-wise, is it has its own tax structure. So you could